Hi, everyone. So we're back with our podcast. And today we have the huge honor of having a very good friend of mine. And I would just like to welcome you, Tighe, to this new podcast that we're doing. Welcome here.
Thank you, Ole Martin. It's quite a pleasure and an honor to be with you in this moment in time.
We're happy to have you part of it. And for those of you that are new to our podcast, essentially what we wanted to do is just highlight a little bit about what's happening in the world of sports now, especially talking about like the different things with the coronavirus impacting the sport industry. And today we're going to talk about, sports that maybe some of you are familiar with, some of you maybe not, but we're going to talk about the interesting sport of beach soccer, what is happening there, how the coronavirus is being impacting. So essentially the topic would be the world of beach soccer, events, athletes, and corona. Very interesting topic. But let me just like take like a personal story about our guest here, because Tig was actually the first person that gave me the first opportunity when I came to the US, which I'm extremely glad for. I remember I was being volunteering at one of your beach soccer events. I'm not sure, it was at Stinson Beach. Stinson Beach. Very funny experience. Do you remember that? Good times, good times.
Unspeakable times, yes.
I remember you were like pushing me all around and I was like running my ass off to do all the fun stuff. But I made it through, and here we are knowing each other after a couple good years, and I've been, helping you out with Pro-Am, of course. But why don't you speak a little bit about your background, so I think everyone gets a little bit of more sense of like who you are, what you do, and so it makes sense to what we're going to talk about.
Sure. Well, I mean, I started as a soccer coach and a soccer player. I grew up, I was sort of in that generation of US players that were of the first to start playing when they're, 5, 6 years old during the
Right.
big push when we were trying to get the World Cup that Mexico grabbed from us for '86. And it was during that time that the amount of soccer players has grown and had basically that foundation created of what we have today, with it
Right.
being the most participated sport. Um, from there, at a very young age, at 18, just barely out of high school, I started coaching.
Right.
I ended up being one of the first paid coaches in my area to actually be able to start earning a living doing so.
Yeah.
Whereas I started at 18, I started getting paid when I was about 21.
Right.
Um, and from there, I've now had over 30 years of coaching experience. In 2005, I was introduced to beach soccer.
Right.
Um, Thought of it as an interesting venture,
Yeah.
just something fun to do. And ironically enough, we started our event the very same weekend that FIFA took over and started their World Cup, their official FIFA World Cup.
Yeah.
So we literally started on the same week. And we've seen both organizations obviously grow over time.
Right.
They have a little bit more funding than we do, so
Just a tiny bit. Just a
just a
tiny
bit,
bit.
just a wee bit. But I've been involved in coaching from the Olympic development level, state level for California.
Right.
I've been involved in IDing at the regional level. Former U.S. national team assistant coach for beach
Right.
soccer from 2006 until end of 2009.
Right.
Participated and won 2 CONCACAF championships and took third in another. Went to a couple World Cups in Brazil and have been exposed to the game, ever since at the highest level. Created our own club here in Northern California for both men and women. Our women are, in the last look, our women are now ranked 9th in the world, and
Not
our
bad at
men
all.
are our men are one of the best in the U.S. And we've got, I think, at least 3 players from each team that are now playing for our U.S. national team.
Nice.
And that was sort of the goal
Yeah.
of forming this. Having done events here for now 15 years on the West Coast, and having expanded the events to Florida and New Jersey, Chicago, Wisconsin, also Southern California. and as well as international events in Bali and Singapore, and
Right.
working on an event presently in Barbados, which was supposed to take place this September, but because of everything that is going on,
Right.
we have to be responsible and think about what's going to be right,
For
for the
sure.
long term.
For
But
sure.
that gives you, and then I also run a men's soccer club. I've been running that for over 20 years here, and as coach, we were the 2018 state champions for adult soccer in California. So
Right.
got a lot of soccer background,
A lot.
a lot in education. I took kids to Real Madrid for 10 years every summer. So saw the best at their best at the time of their best during the Galacticos, and
Yeah.
I was actually even able to interview some of their players and such at the time, like Morientes. I actually got the pleasure of meeting Zidane at one moment. So a lot of experiences have been granted to me with the sport, and now many of them are just involved in beach because I found that it's such a great resource, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point or another.
Absolutely. So, I mean, like, you're essentially the perfect guy to speak about this topic, right?
I I don't know if I'm the perfect person, but I think I know a few things. Yeah,
You
I
do for
believe.
sure. So, I mean, like, I think, I mean, like, a lot of our viewers and listeners and people are on earth obviously, passionate about sports, but I don't think everyone is like, so delved into like beach soccer. So why don't you just like give us a little bit baseline about what is beach soccer, what makes it unique, what was it about beach soccer as well that like intrigued you to be part of it in terms of like just not soccer itself.
Yeah, of course. Like I said in the beginning, this was just about something that was supposed to be fun.
Right.
But over time, and it was probably about, it was almost a decade into it, I guess. I mean, all of a sudden I had this epiphany that the teams that I was putting in the sand were getting the best results when they were on the grass.
Right.
And then I thought back, like even more so before I even got into beach soccer and was coaching, I had certain teams that, lo and behold, they were underachievers, and then we got in the sand and somehow they became very overachievers.
Right. Huh.
But I didn't add all that up in the beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
But the truth of it being is beach soccer, I was initially into it mostly because it was a situation where teams and clubs would come, and you could
Right.
see the team bonding, the camaraderie that they were getting out of it, because it was something different than the I would say the monthly, but really now it's almost the daily beat down of grass soccer.
Right.
Whereas I
Right.
am a grass coach and have been forever,
Yeah.
um, players get burnt out, and
Yeah.
beach is something different. But now it's changed quite a bit. My outlook on it has gone to the point where I see this as a developmental tool.
Yeah.
It's a scenario whether you're talking about Real Madrid, which built their own beach full-size beach soccer field and
Right.
football league court when they created Valdevedos.
Yeah.
Once they sold their property downtown Madrid and they built it out near the Barajas airport.
Right.
Granted, they had Roberto Carlos and Ronaldo and other Brazilians on the team at the time, but
Yeah.
they instituted sand right next to the main pitch,
Right.
and lo and behold, they had pretty huge success.
Yeah.
Bayern Munich has moved at sometime recently moved away from the gyms and the weight rooms to concentrate because on the sand because of the overall body development rather than
Right.
the isolation with muscles. But from the standpoint of skills, the things that you do in the sand and the type of things that you concentrate on are 100% transferable over the grass.
Right.
And in addition to that, they're the things that make players flashy. I mean, if you look at any great Brazilian player, whether it's Pele or David Alves, or even the pretty much anyone you go through
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
has a huge sand background.
Right.
Ronaldinho is a perfect example,
The
and
guy's a legend. His
yeah, and
technique is crazy.
Danny Alves has been quite prolific in proclaiming that all the skills that he has come from his time in the sand.
Right.
So, and there's dozens of photos of him and Neymar playing football,
Right.
futebol,
Right.
and it's just clear. The problem is that you have so many coaches and directors in general in the United States, and specifically,
Right.
that say that playing in the sand doesn't do anything to improve your grass game. It increases the amount of injuries.
Right.
You know, just a bunch of false narratives, and
Right.
it's got to get to a point where, like with futsal, which is now everybody's favorite flavor of the
Right.
month, that they have to realize that there's an actual huge benefit. And in some ways,
For
many
sure.
people think that beaches got the most. There's one coach who grew up playing with Marco Echeverri at the Bolivian Tighe Academy that I met,
Right.
and he basically explained to me that of all the types of football that you can play, beach soccer is the most tactical and the most technical.
Yeah.
And if you've watched any highlights of beach soccer, it's pretty easy to understand why that's the case. So
100%. It demands a lot of technique, for sure. I remember, like, as well, you know me, like, I've been playing football most of my life, soccer for the Americans listeners, of course. But it was something different. I remember, like, of course, I was working the events, but you gave me the opportunity to play during one of the co-ed games, and it was hard, when you're not used to it. Then it demanded a different level of technique and control. But I think, like, to like at the big picture here, nonetheless, like, whether you're a beach soccer player or a grassroots player or grass field player, I think, like, being able to train in different environments and learn the different skill set and attributes from those fields, whether that's inside like futsal or beach soccer or normal, like, you will gain benefit from it. And for sure, beach soccer demands that extra, because again, you're playing on sand. It's hard, it's not easy. But you actually have, like, some good tips on, like, how are you gonna run on sand, because that is not easy. When I remember I started and I got so tired in my legs, and like, how to avoid that? What do you do if someone out there actually want to try beach soccer? I know now it's maybe not the best time, but
well,
if you want to do it, like, how do you start?
you run like you're in high heels. I mean, any woman understands this, but for
For
a
the
guy,
boys, though, for the boys. What about
yeah,
those?
the reality is whether you're walking in sand or whether you're running in sand,
Right,
toes in first, because I mean, think again, and we'll just do it quickly. If you're stepping in sand with your heel like we all do, it
right,
sinks, and then you have to press through your arch.
right,
But if you're running in and you're diving in here, you're compressing the sand underneath your foot, so you actually have kind of like a starting block to push off of.
right.
I mean,
Kind of like the sprinters, right? When they're doing, like, the starting
that's
block.
that's exactly how I
Yeah.
put it. Good memory you have there. It is a scenario where people really have to get past the idea that it's so difficult, because your body adjusts. It's like
Right,
I compare it to snowboarding, or anything where you realize that you have these muscles that you never knew you had. But
100%.
once the first 2 days of snowboarding are insanely painful, but once you do it and get past it, it doesn't matter if it's 6 months later, a year later, your
Right,
body never hurts the same again. And it's the
right,
same with beach soccer. The more times you do it, and especially if you can continue to do it, like, for you know on a kind of a continuous basis for a short period of time, all
right.
the pain goes away. I could literally go out today. Well, granted, I can't really do that unless I was on my own, but
For
you
sure.
could go out. I could go out today, and I could get away with playing for an hour and a half, and
Yeah,
it would not it would not affect me too much.
right.
And I'm 47 years old, and although I'm not as fast as I used to be, I can still run around on the pitch pretty well.
For sure. And I think, like, it's just an adjustable thing, right? With, like, but that's also with indoors, like, obviously, like, it's kind of like, think about, like, the difference between running on, like, asphalt or running, or, like, in the woods, right? Like, running in the woods would be, like, unbalanced, like, you have to adapt and you will use other muscles. So I mean, like, it's an adjustable thing. But I remember as well, like, it was the first game was really hard. I was, like, sliding everywhere and I got so tired. And then he gave me some pointers, and suddenly, like, you adapt because you know how to play soccer. So, like, that's not the issue. But then you just got to adapt to the environment, which I think is a great learning experience. And I think also demands a different level of your skill set, both technical and physical as well. Being in that game. But for sure, going back to like, we actually have a fun fact though about beach soccer in general, and you have to like point me out if this is actually correct. I found it online, and I mean, like, I think it's a valid source. But for those of you that don't know, there's a lot of goals being scored in the beach soccer game. So what I found is that with an average scoring rate of 1 goal every 3 minutes, around 11 goals are scored in total per game. So that's a lot of goals. Does that seems about right for you?
Yeah, there's a shot about on average every 30 seconds.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean it's perfect. I mean, granted, this is an international audience, but for the problematic Americans who have a short-term memory span, it's the perfect sport. It's three
Yeah.
12-minute periods. It's high-flying action. There's bike kicks. There's you know, just constant action.
Right.
So it's built perfectly for the 1 hour time slot that we have for TV as well. But it's catching on. People that see it, like on ESPN Ocho, let's say,
Right.
um, they love it, and if they're flipping through channels, most people will stop at it because it's unique,
Right.
it's different, and it's high flying action. So
And it's so
yeah,
many amazing goals too. I think like there's probably one of the few sports that where you get so many amazing technical and fine finesse goals, in one game. It's
yeah,
unbelievable.
yeah. One sponsor who was a huge EPL fan,
Yeah.
he was coming out and checking out training matches that we were doing, and he was like, he watches EPL religiously, and it's
Right.
like, you know what? He's like, I see maybe two bike kicks all season long.
Right.
Like, I saw like 3 dozen in the last 2 hours, and like over a dozen were like fantastic goals.
Right.
It lends itself to those that enjoy those aspects of the game, and you
Right.
know their attention spans.
Well, let's talk a little bit about what is actually happening in the beach soccer world now, though, because obviously, the coronavirus is going on. Every essentially sport industry is being impacted. And I read on the beach soccer worldwide, homepage and their news, which is kind of like the leading organization in the beach soccer world. They actually decided to move all their events until June. So here we're talking about like El Salvador Cup, Euro Winners Cup, and also the Euro Winners Challenge. What do you think that actually means for the industry and like for beach soccer, and how will that impact obviously the locations of where these are being hosted? I know like the Winners Cup and the Euro Winners Challenge is in Portugal, if I'm not mistaken. So,
Yes.
what is your viewpoint on this?
That they're going to be lucky to be able to have it.
Yeah.
Right now Portugal is they're at 3,000 cases and rising like 700 a day or something.
Right.
It's tough to say. I mean, we've already postponed our April event, obviously,
Yeah.
and probably wasn't mentioned, but I live in San Francisco. We are not really we're what, like, in our second week of shelter at stay, or stay in
Yeah.
shelter, or I can't even get it right.
You-
But
You're at
um,
home. That's all that matters.
I am, yeah, and I started a week earlier before they made it mandatory, because we had a direct flight coming from Wuhan up until like January 23rd or 24th,
Yeah.
and at that point it's here. We were having we were
For
having
sure.
daily flights here, and whereas New York right now is the epicenter for the world, more or less. I think they took over from Italy with,
Right.
I think, 6,000, 5,000 cases yesterday, or what? No, 5,000 total cases at this point.
Right.
But San Francisco here, we're still not getting tests, so it's really hard to see how it's going to impact us. But
Right.
we're preparing for the worst.
Which
We
is should.
haven't canceled our events in June yet. We're going to
Right.
hold off, and
Yeah.
like yourself, once how you were with us at one time. We also
Right.
have students from the University of San Francisco that are currently working for us
Right.
from the Orange campus down in LA, as well as here, and we have others that are trying to get experience.
Right.
And So we're going through the motions of doing our social media, which has now actually changed a bit
Yeah.
from promoting our events in sport to being conscientious about the times right now.
Right.
We're trying to think of different ways of being more of a go-to place for feel good moments
Right.
during this period of time. For the industry in general, I think that everybody is hopeful that we can do things in June.
Yeah.
But the Imperial study out of England that focused on the U.S. said that we were going to be at our height mid-June for
Right.
the number of cases. So if that lends itself to be true, then we probably won't be having any events this year.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
my mindset's on August,
Yeah.
but you know, as the cliche goes, history repeats itself. And if we, no matter what anyone says about how great we are in regards to recognizing disease and taking our steps to control it and so on and so forth,
Right.
when you've got the governor of California saying that 56% of our population in the state, which is larger than most countries, are going to
Right.
contract this, and if we look at history with the Spanish flu,
Yeah.
it was much more devastating when it came around the second time after summer than it was in the initial poll.
Right.
So
Right.
so um, it's really hard to say. I mean, we have to try and remain optimistic,
Right.
but
For
at
sure.
the same time, we also have to be realistic.
Yeah.
From a standpoint as a business owner, it's a small business owner. I made the move to kind of concentrate on this last year.
Yeah.
It's devastating. Our government supposedly passed a $2 trillion stimulus yesterday, but
Yeah.
it's our government at this moment in time, and how that's going to trickle down.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really hard to say whether that's going to have any impact on an independent contractor like myself. That's
Right.
business for himself.
Yeah.
Um, so we're trying to find other means.
For sure.
And everyone's losing their jobs here. They're saying unemployment rate in the U.S. is going to hit 30%.
Right.
Um, that's a lot of my colleagues. I picked up and got laid off from that last week.
Right.
Uh, they laid off 80% of their staff because 90% of their income comes from events. So it's
Right.
affecting
And
it's
now,
affecting.
all of them are being canceled or postponed or what it might be. So, it's a very challenging time for sure. And I think, as you said, like you have to, have that mix between being optimistic, of course, but also being realistic. So let's talk a little bit about like what initiatives are being done though in the beach soccer world, and like what are some of the initiatives that you are doing too. But, I think for most of you that are like, I assume most of you are probably like on all social medias right now, because I mean, like we're all at home, we're just trying to make the best out of the situation. But for those of you that don't know, it's been happening like kind of like this hashtag stay at home challenge, which essentially is toilet paper juggles, which is also kind of funny considering everyone is gathering a lot of toilet paper. But that's obviously a different topic that we don't have to dive into. But I think that's a great initiative that is being done. And I also read that the beach soccer worldwide is, they're doing quizzes, with their audience. They're created their own Spotify beach soccer list, which is again keeping the community, together in the beach soccer world, but also live Q&A sessions with pro players. But Ty, why don't you talk a little bit about like how's like they talk about a lot of the community, right, in the beach soccer world. And I think like one of the things I got from like reading in the beach soccer worldwide was how like well the community is together and how you kind of like work together. Can you talk a little bit about that, and like how do you see them, the community working together here?
Well, the thing is one of the other aspects, especially once I got involved in the international piece of beach soccer. For
Right.
instance, we took our women's team to the World Winners' Cup in Turkey
Right.
this last October, which is why we were able to be ranked so high, because we played the best teams in the world and took everybody to overtime, and it was a great experience. But whether you're on the men's side or the women's side, it's not like grass.
Right.
It's a different philosophical foundation, if
Yeah.
it's for lack of a better word. The beach soccer community is so friendly to each other.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether your name is Lorenk, which is like one of the best players in the world, or if you're some guy coming from some country out of nowhere. Everybody.
Like a cold country in Norway or something that never done beach soccer.
Well, I mean, if you're out there trying to play and you've got either a foot in the game or you're a player or what have you, everyone has really high respect for each other.
Yeah.
They care for each other. They want to help.
Right.
Obviously I have over 30 years experience in the grass game, and I can speak from a lot of experiences that's just not the case in
Right.
many ways. It's a dog eat dog world in some
Yeah.
cases.
Yeah.
It's compartmentalizing. It's
Yeah.
stealing players from one club or another or what have
Yeah.
you. And whereas you have that with the beach soccer community, to some degree, it's not the norm.
Right. Right.
Everybody. So to speak to your point, um, anything that people can do to continue to communicate with their friends around the world through the sport,
Yeah.
or any way that they can show positivity or create situations where we can continue to communicate with each other.
Right.
um, they're welcomed by the community,
Yeah.
and they're sought, and they're enjoyed. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a really unique situation. I think Beach Soccer Worldwide has done a good job in regards to that, especially early on,
For sure.
and
For sure.
it speaks wonders to those involved in the sport about just a different angle of philosophy
Right.
and companionship,
Right. Right.
camaraderie that you can find. You Everybody is, like I said, it doesn't matter if you're the best player or the worst player.
Right.
You know, everyone has a smile. Everyone has a funny handshake, which obviously we can't do anymore right now. But it's really an honor and a blessing to be involved in this community.
That's great to hear, and I think essentially what you're talking about there would be a major key, for coming through this, situation that we're in right now, everyone, and more than ever, I think we can be extremely glad also having the digital aspect, of like the social platforms or channels to be able to keep staying in touch, keeping involved, doing initiatives, whether it's not particularly being outside on the field together, but still keeping that engagement, the community going, and it's great to hear that the beach soccer community it's so collaborative and they're for each other essentially. And we're starting to go somewhere around the end here, and let's talk a little bit about like where do we go from here, right? And one of the things I saw, on, again going back to the beach soccer worldwide, was that they talk a lot about they will continue to prepare their events, calendars, and match schedules, looking for new options to boost beach soccer development at different levels, reviewing the best solutions to support the growth of the sport in every corner of the world. And that's a pretty big statement. Of course, it's a small community and it's a challenging time now. But how do you see they can do this, going forward and in the time they're being right now? And because obviously, a lot of the events are being, they said older events are being, delayed until like June, probably going to be like the earliest, maybe most likely going to be later, as you talked about, like situation in the US, Europe, like Portugal as well. Where do you like? How do you see they can essentially do what they're stating here?
Well, I mean, it's also I can speak to that from my own experience with
For
Beach
sure.
Soccer Worldwide. They've been very open
Yeah.
and very supportive of what we're doing. Obviously, João Cusco, who's the head of Beach Soccer Worldwide, I've known him since now 2006, and all his staff are amazing.
Yeah.
The ones that I had communicated with previously, but maybe not had met personally, I was able to do so in Turkey. And anytime I have a question, you know, they're looking to expand. They want to expand with and grow the sport with people that
Right.
have the right intentions.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there that try and get in that do not.
Yeah.
Um, but you know, I went to them with the fact that we're trying to grow an event in Barbados right now. It's
Yeah.
like I mentioned, and they've already basically said that they're 100% behind it, as long as they're allowed to promote it and so on and so forth.
Nice.
And I'm like, oh yeah, sure, no problem.
For sure.
Um, it's a situation where they want to make sure that the sport is grown correctly. There's
Right.
been a lot of different events that have come up around the world saying, hey, there's this, there's that, and the participants have like a beach that has cement underneath it, or they have a tournament where the referees are instructed to make sure a certain outcome comes out, for the
Right.
local teams. I mean, these
Right.
things have been kind of going through the pipeline, and you're hearing about this stuff, and those are
Right.
the things we're trying to avoid.
Yeah.
I think that they have the capacity to support the sport in a way that
Yeah.
finding people like myself and others that love it and want to grow it from a
Yeah.
grassroots level to that international level,
For sure.
and exposing. They have the tools to provide us
Right.
and the know-how to do so. I think it's very important that they continue doing their calendars and they continue planning as though it is going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not only because it gives us something to look forward to,
Right.
even
Right.
if it gets canceled,
Yeah.
but if we just end up stopping what we're doing, then we're
Right.
not prepared for when this passes and we
100%.
start moving forward.
No, I
So
I I think wrapping up there. What I do enjoy as well, as you mentioned, is that they're on the front foot, essentially, and wants to do things. And I think it's smart of them to, of course, they have a community behind them too, which I think makes it easier, because we all understand, like, at the end of the day, like, whether that's like in 2 months or 5 months or maybe even a year, that they will come back where we're going to meet, when we're going to start doing the events again. So we got to be prepared for that moment, which also brings us a little bit back to like why we're doing the podcast, because at some point you're going to go back to your ordinary job, and we want you to be prepared of like what's going in the industry, and come back with your front foot on, and know what's been happening in the industry, and how can also you be stimulated to maybe come up with new ideas, new solutions, because
that's all we're working on. Yeah.
a lot of things will change, based on this. And I think, whether you're a small company or a big company, you have to think a little bit different now where you go and how you structure it and plan out. So I think, like, I wish, of course, the beach soccer community, all the best, and for you as well,
Thank you.
moving forward. And with that, Tighe, I would like to thank you, for the time. It's been an amazing talk, a lot of fun. I hope you had fun in this conversation too.
I did, and I got a baby crying in the next room. I'm gonna have to go take care of. That's part of the stay-at-home sort of thing right now. My wife's got a call right now. Hey, you get to see her as she comes out. So
Perfect.
I'm gonna be taking over our family duties now.
You
So
do
I'm
that, so perfect timing. And with that, I would like to thank everyone for listening. And we always finish with "Vi snakkes," which means "I see you later" in Norwegian, as I think you know.
yeah, I do. Hey,
All right, Tighe.
great to see you. We'll talk to you soon, man.
Likewise. Talk soon. Bye bye.
Bye bye.